Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Project Flux podcast. We got another edition of the Spotlight today, and with us is Tolis, and hopefully I'll get this right, Chatzisymeon. Have I got that right, Tolis?
Perfect. Yeah. That's
Perfect. Oh wow, okay, I can
Good,
speak a
nice.
bit of Greek now. He's the CEO at Nometech, and I was lucky enough to witness Tolis giving a demonstration and a presentation around his products or his company's many products actually. Uh, Seminar that I went to, and I was really impressed. So I asked Tolis to come on because I think it's something you guys are really going to enjoy talking about. We're looking mainly at kind of estimating and cost management, which I know we've got a lot of cost managers and project managers who are going to be interested in this. So welcome to the show, Tolis. Thank you so much for giving up some of your time to spend with both me and Yoshi today.
Thanks, James. Thanks for inviting me.
Cool. So we always want to start by finding out where people's heads are really, because things are moving on so very fast in the AI world. So what's the thing that's been keeping you awake or been on your mind lately? Is there one particular thing that you're currently thinking about more than anything else?
Yeah, indeed. I mean, if you see the progress that the AI is doing and how exponentially it's improving and growing, so I keep thinking constantly lately how my business is going to look like. I mean, how Nometech will look like in 5 or 10 years from now, if we're going to still be relevant, or if the giants like Google or ChatGPT will wipe all the verticals out. So that's something that I think, I mean, how will remain relevant and helping our industry.
That's a really good point. We talk about that a lot, Tolis, actually. It's hard to imagine exactly what the environment's going to look like in 5 years' time. And yeah. It's a real danger, isn't it? But whilst there's a lot of good things that come out of the giants, at the same time, the innovation really comes from the smaller companies and the startups. And if we lose that, I worry that we lose that spark.
Yeah, I agree with you, definitely.
When you kind of think about that, Tolis, what comes to your mind first and foremost?
What comes to my mind is if that super intelligence evolve, and that's above all the intelligence that we have as individuals or startups or small companies or SMEs, if that will be so advanced that we still, the small companies will not be relevant. So something that solves all the issues, all the problems. So it's interesting. I don't think in 5 or 10 years, but somewhere down in the future, it may come at some stage.
Yeah.
If we don't kill each other as
Well, isn't it strange, isn't it? On the one hand, things are evolving and we're innovating and doing things that are just beyond science fiction. And then on the other hand, there's all these things going in the world that feels like we're going backwards. So we're in a really strange place in history, I feel.
Yeah, indeed.
But you've been involved in the whole engineering and technology side of things for quite some time, most of your career, I believe. So what originally sparked your passion for it, and why did you get involved in it in the first place?
Yeah, so as a young, I would say as a teenager, I was always interested into bridges and civil engineering and how tall buildings stay stable and how we get a long span. So bridge engineering was my main interest at the beginning.
Okay.
And for that reason, I studied civil engineering. And then I moved to the States. I did my master's degree. I graduated in Greece, and I moved to the States. And there I did a master's in construction engineering and project management. So that's where I was exposed to cost estimating and all that stuff.
Okay, interesting. So what would you say, right, to a civil engineer starting today? Would you have any advice for them, particularly with what's happening with artificial intelligence and the way that things are?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I graduated initially as structural engineer. So I think this will be solved by AI. That's one of the things that AI will solve for sure, like optimizing the structure or providing the rebar you need. I think this will be solved in five years from now. So it will be more creative, the job, more, taking responsibility of the results that the AI is producing, having a critical mind to assess the results, and also more on site, so follow up the construction on site. Even that will evolve as well with robotics and stuff, but it's further down the line. Right?
That's another huge minefield, isn't it, with the robotics? I'm glad you said that, because we've had a few guests on recently who talk about this. What's going to become more valuable than anything in this era of AI for people in projects is those human skills, those personal skills, emotional intelligence, communication. Do you subscribe to that? Do you think that?
I subscribe to that. Yeah, that's going to be really important. Yeah. Emotional intelligence, leadership skills.
Yes.
how you coordinate, you communicate with other people, so you solve problems before they arise. So this would be essential skills that people need.
So, Tolis,
Because I,
you've been in. So, I think you're one of the first structural engineers I think we've had on the podcast. And just
Yeah.
in your network, do you feel that others are thinking the same in regards to AI, or do you think there's a wide difference in opinion?
I've been away from the structural engineering market for a long time. So, but from discussion I have with classmates, I don't think they realize it still. I think still they think learning a structural software will still is an essential skill, and even getting the theory behind that will help them become better structural engineers. But from what I can see, from what I'm seeing, I think this will be solved as an issue.
is there a bit of head in the sand, do you think? Because I noticed this particularly with some architects that I speak to. It's like, just don't talk to me about it. I don't want to know.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. It's, they're closing their eyes on what's happening. The same for estimating, actually. It's the same thing. We see it coming. But I
Well,
will
it's
explain. I think it's a different beast to handle. It's a bit different than structural engineering.
yeah. No, but
Although the soil conditions are different every time, and again, there are some uncertainties that the structural engineer needs to solve. AI will help more in that field.
yeah. So let's talk about estimating then, because you've started your company Nometech, and there's a lot of
Yeah,
products.
just to add on that, so and that's how I started Nometech actually. So in the States, I was lucky because when I went to ask for my thesis, I had a professor there. He was a Romanian, a guy named Karin Popescu, and the topic he assigned to me after we had discussion was why don't you go and benchmark all estimating systems that are in the market today and write the best practices methodology, how you
Okay.
select the best estimating system.
And what year was this, Tolis?
That was 2000. That was in
Okay.
2000.
Yeah.
So imagine then I downloaded about 90 estimating tools, 90.
Was there that many even in the year
That many
2000?
that time. Yeah, I had to research in the internet all these estimating tools. Even
Wow.
global, right? It was a global benchmark. And at that time, we didn't have Google Forms and stuff. So I had a friend that was a doctor at the University of Computer Science, at the Computer Science department. And we wrote some script so vendors would log in and answer questions like features and stuff they were providing. So I managed to get responses from 40 companies at that time, specs. I bought with my minimum, money at the time a few demos. I downloaded all the trials that I could get, and then I had to try to learn each one of them. So in order to understand why it's the fit for each estimating tool. And imagine that gave me the specs. So I had in my mind a list of what an estimating tool looks like, what problems it solves, what's the best of breed at that time. So that was an interesting experience.
And what did you come away thinking? And were you blown away thinking, wow, that the software is amazing? Or did you see it? Presumably you saw a gap, which is why you started Nometech.
No, I didn't realize that at that time. So at that time, I finished my thesis, and then I was working for a couple of years on the construction site. I did my army service in Greece, which everybody has to do.
Yeah.
And then I moved to the UK and started working for Balfour Beatty as planning engineers, Primavera P6. I knew Primavera P6 from my thesis and from the US, from the university. I got the job in London, and I was a planner, right? Planning the everyday tasks for Balfour Beatty at that time. I did some maintenance at the metro stations.
Mm-hmm.
And while I was working there was an estimator sitting on the other side of the office, and that's the interesting part. I was planning my activities, daily tasks, and he was estimating.
Yeah.
The guy was on his 60s at that time, right? Really old guy, posh guy, really well dressed and stuff. And we never talked to each other. I mean, about this, we were having chats in the break, but I never understood what he was estimating, and he never understood what I was planning.
Which is crazy, isn't it? Because they're interrelated in
That
every
was
single way.
2004. That was 2004. I remember that because that was when Greece got the European football game.
Oh, you had to get that in there, yeah.
Yeah.
We all remember that.
Yeah. So I said, okay, there is a gap here. Something needs to be done. Estimating needs to communicate with planning. And that's when I did the business plan. And that's when the idea sparked.
So what was the first thing? What was the first thing you looked at when you looked to kind of converge the two disciplines?
The first thing I looked at was the methodologies, are actually how estimating is performed. You have one side, planners think about productivities. I mean, we need to execute something, how many cubic meters of concrete we need to pour per day. The planners were looking at man hours per unit, for individual carpenters and stuff. So how do I get this joined together. That was the first issue I had to solve. Understand the two different approaches on estimating, and then try to match those. So that was the initial system we built.
So in today's world, then modern estimating, what does it take to do that optimally?
Today you have databases and things. So to marry those two, you can put some rules. There are some rules you can put in the middle to translate planning work with estimating. So, and also we have the cost management systems that can grab it, like Unify or Contruent. There are some, or Isetia, there are some partners we work with that they can get the estimate, the BAQs and the resources. They can get the plan and the program, Primavera P6, for example, and you put a control account in the middle that translates and upscales those up to control accounts, something that you can control. So that's the modern approach on this issue, cost control systems.
Okay. Just winding back a bit for those, because we do have some listeners who might not come from a estimating or QS background. How would you describe, like in the modern day, what cost estimating actually involves today? Because the picture that everyone has in their mind is, like you say, the older guy sitting in a corner somewhere, sucking between his teeth, getting quite grumpy quite a lot of the time. Yeah. Has it changed, or is that still the reality?
I mean, from my experience, we still see this happening, right? Yeah. But it's not as bad as when I started Nometech. So I remember the early days I had to face all these old guys all the time. Right? And they were very overly protecting their kingdom. Nobody knew what they were doing. If you believe it or not, one of the estimating systems still exists in the market. They used to have some game that you would play and switch screens instantly. So they were playing like card games and then flip it instantly. So nobody knew what these guys were doing, right? It was like protected data. Today, you have modern generations coming in, so they understand data. They start to understand about BIM as well, so it's becoming a bit more open. Still, the old guy is taking the decision. He's signing off the estimates. It's still a bit challenging, but not as bad as it used to be.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that has always plagued the estimating profession is that at the end of the day, like you said, it always has to go to somebody to sign it off, and they can overrule everything. I'm sure you've had the situation where someone goes to the nth degree with detail and data and analysis to come up with an estimate, and then some guy will say, that doesn't feel right, I'm going to take that much off to be competitive, or vice versa. But do you think there's an opportunity now with your products and with AI and things to make that reliance on gut feel, which we know can be really dangerous? That gut feel can be really dangerous, which is why we have so many projects going over budget. Do you think that's going to lessen that? We're going to be able to rely a bit more on real-time data going forward?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, that's definitely something that we have also with our product Cosmo, Cost Modeler, which basically gives you that gut feeling, but it's documented. So your historical estimates get in a repository, and you can do cost per square meter analysis. You can compare across history. You can, of course, adjust the data, normalize the data for inflation and all the economical values that came in. And then this square meter is coming on your iPhone. I mean, if you're a CEO of a company, you can still scroll and see my villas, my hospitals, how much is the cost per square meter. And now it depends on the data you have, the amount of data. So we're talking, if you have, let's say, past estimates, 10 hospitals, then it's a linear regression. For example, to give you some cost planning or statistical analysis, one attribute. If you have 30 or more products, you can do multi-attribute analysis. So it might be the number of beds plus the volume of the hotel plus the number of patients it gets per year. So this can be the drivers. You can do more accurate analysis. And that's something we're doing recently now. We're doing it with a very big industrial construction company, doing industrial plants and buildings. They give us hundreds of projects, and then we can start looking at machine learning and how we can predict the cost per square meter of the cost of the new plant based on their historical estimates.
And how accurate are you finding those linear regressions and machine learning results to be?
It depends again on the quality of your data, right? That's the thing with AI. So if your data is pretty accurate, then you can achieve pretty decent accuracy, even up to 20, 30%. That's the range you can achieve. But you have recorded everything, you have attributes, you can
one of the things that I think I've always struggled with is how do you get it? Because you talk about is the quality of the data determines the quality of the result, which is right. And you base it on previous projects. But as we know, nobody even though we've got all these codes of measurement, the NRM and SMM and all these different ways that we're meant to measure and codify things. No one does it in the same format. So do you have the similar challenges in terms of making sure we're comparing apples with apples?
Yes, yes. So that's a good question because I was involved on the ICMS standard. I was on the committee that was drafting the standard. And the first three versions are not now anymore there. But my first role was to make sure that the standard is data driven. So somebody can report in that standard, no matter how your estimate is structured, the code must be the same with the same description. So you don't slightly change something and you draft differently, the report. So ICMS is definitely that direction. It's helping solve that issue. The attributes, even we had to say this is the name of the attribute you have to report. Like the built-up area must be GFA, gross floor area, right? Mm-hmm. You must have the same name for all estimating systems or design system to report in the same name and the same format. So it's very important to have this consistency in the accuracy. And the challenge I faced when I entered there was in the QS's mind, they were thinking like I have to create a big booklet of pages where the more pages I produce, I'm doing a better job. We had to take out that mentality. We need to think that, we're talking about data and how we can put a machine doing the reporting, the coding, and the structure of the estimate in something meaningful, something that the machine can do it for us, not us writing pages. And ICMS is definitely in that direction. It's something.
Yeah, it's so right what you said. It's at the moment our profession has spent for some people hundreds of years getting to the point where we've got some kind of code that works for humans. But actually, when you want to make it work for AI or machines, you need to flip it. You need to flip it. So have you seen ICMS? Is it having the hold that we thought it would? Is it having the impact and the effect that we thought it would? Or do you still think we've got some way to go?
Still there is a way to go. I mean, we are trying now to work on a mega scale, with mega scale customers in the Middle East to comply with it. Still the owners are resisting. And that's part because the consultants that help them don't guide them that direction because it's more work for them doing it the way they're used to it than reporting ICMS. So it has to be the owner that dictates ICMS and then the consultants should comply, not the other way around. Now it's the other way around.
Yes. So a bit like
Tolis, you've spoken about machine learning models and different AI algorithms. Can you speak more to some of the AI that you're using within Nometech?
Yes, so within Nometech we do lots of R&D in AI. So I have a team of R&D guys that are looking into AI. The latest release we have, Costos 8.5, our estimating platform, we use AI. So to basically it's NLP, it's LLM, large language model. So when you upload the bill of quantity BOQ in the system, let's say you're a contractor, the LLM will search into your local database to find the best matches that you have within your own data and scores them. So you can check from within my own dataset, my own database, what are the best matches that I need to price, that I can use for pricing this. If I am in a rush, maybe I can automatically select the best matches, right, and assign the details. Now, we have also the same algorithm with online databases, a commercial database. Let's say you want to compare with external database what's happening. You can also run this scenario and get the best matches. So that's one area we have delivered in the last release. Mm-hmm. I still think 2D is important part of the business, right? 2D takeoffs, working with drawings and stuff. So we have implemented the computer vision for automatic counting objects, let's say how many doors, how many floors. We are working on R&D stage now for also taking off from 2D drawings. And that's something we realized late because we thought that with BIM that's not necessary, but still the industry is resisting, right?
That was the great promise, unfortunately. Yeah. I mean, so on the taking off, do you think we'll ever get to the point where that just becomes AI just does that automatically and there's just a cursory check at the end? Is that?
I think, yeah. I mean, I've seen, and even with my guys, I've seen this happen. I've seen it with my own eyes. Plotting and drawing and measuring the areas, the walls, the stuff. Still, it's not accurate, and still the amount of clicks that you have to do to correct it, that's why I haven't released it, is more than, just doing it manually. Yeah. But I think we'll reach a stage.
What do you think will be required for you to get to that position where the accuracy is enough, sufficient?
It's more the data set. I mean, more drawings and more. That's needed. Collecting good quality data sets now. Even I have an opening in our company to hire some architect that will do this thing for us, or even cut from BIM drawings and feed the model.
Tolis, we hear from some people on the show that because of the power of these models coming out, particularly the inference models, the need for data, whilst you're always going to need the data, the need for it to be very, very carefully structured is becoming less so because these models can deduce and they can infer. Do you think that's going to change the way that you approach Nometech going forward? Do you think you're going to be able to utilize some of these pretty advanced models to shortcut any lack of data? Because we know that's something we suffer from in the industry.
You mean to create data sets? What exactly?
Yeah, so, to either create data sets synthetically, to use inference, to deduce from existing data sets. That seems to be one of the powers of these, for instance.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is evolving, right, massively. We saw with the latest stuff we were testing that the last one I saw last week was they fed it 30 drawings and the system started to recognize living rooms and bathrooms and stuff with 30 drawings. Yeah. So, yeah, it's been proving and definitely it will get there for sure.
Other than the data, though, because data is one challenge that we have, and that's something that's pervasive across AI generally. What other challenges do you find within building AI-based solutions for estimating?
Okay, yeah. First, I mean, the challenges I see is, again, the data set, as I said. I think that's the most. And of course, the skill, right? Having people that can understand what AI is, which model to use. It's not using ChatGPT. You have to experiment and understand, neural networks, backward fit. You have to go back to the basics. R&D guys we need to be solid and have a solid understanding on this. Not download, let's say, DeepSeek and feed it and get it out. This is a challenge. Finding the skilled people, developers to understand this. This is a challenge.
Do you find it quite difficult to get that? So, because that data skill, because ideally, when you work in construction, you have people who are, savvy with data, or those who are more savvy with construction. But it's very difficult finding people that have both.
That combination is so difficult to find. Someone that understands data and has construction experience. You can either find a data geek but doesn't understand the global construction, or the other way around. Someone that has a good experience but doesn't get it with data sets.
We call them the translator. If you've got that role, you're a bit of a unicorn, aren't you? Because you've got very, very specific skill sets. Because any data scientists we've worked with who haven't been in the industry are always surprised how immature. Obviously, we do amazing things and we build incredible structures and roads, etc. But they're quite surprised how immature the whole data structure is and how siloed everything is. And likewise, I think that people in the industry don't appreciate what a data scientist has to do. So you're right, it's a very, very difficult. It kind of brings me back to kind of a question which turns it on its head. So is there an argument to say that actually, yes, you can get all these data sets of construction projects or whatever projects that have been completed, but we know that lots of construction projects are late, over budget. We never really know the true cost. So how accurate are those estimates that we're basing these algorithms on?
Yeah, it's a good point.
Because we could just
there's a human in the middle. I mean, there's always assumptions, and even the fundamental of estimating by itself, even money, you're transferring something to money, value that you're going to give me to transfer to the project. Money itself is something that is changing. The way money is produced is interesting. If you read, there's some nice books you can read, like The Price of Money. Understand that? That makes it hard even. It's not something that's linked to gold, for example, right? That's a value that's constant and you know how it's evolving. It's a confidence between us exchanging money. This can go up if I need something a lot from you. If I'm building a mega project, I'm going to change the economy at scale, right? I'm going to pay more to get it done quickly and at this scale. So estimating is going to be there always. I don't think it's a function that exists. People will always be interested to get, the value of something because they're going to make a decision based on that. So it will remain, even if AI evolves, it will remain there.
Someone has to make a decision.
I see that in comparison with carbon calculations, because estimating cost is the same as estimating carbon. I think we can reach a stage with carbon in the future where we have a fixed number and everybody's going to agree on when EPDs are fixed and stuff. But with mine, it's going to be a challenge agreeing this number.
Can you speak to that a bit more? Why do you think it's going to be a challenge? Just because there's other factors at play? Like you say, if a government's making a decision on a project, it's not just a monetary value. It could have a huge impact on GDP, etc.
Exactly, Even the interest rates, the interest is going up or down. This affects the economy, inflation, right? It's affected. The economy grows or shrinks. It's inflation or deflation. So
And I suppose intangible things as well, like, mood of the nation, and how do you
Yes, exactly.
quantify
All
that?
this is interconnected. Yeah, definitely. You
If you
see
think
now
of,
with tariffs, right? How do you model tariffs? I was talking with some customers in the US. Next day, they didn't know how much it's gonna cost them the project they already started, right? Like they're doing some transmission lines or things like that. They didn't have this clue. Everything, the steel structures are gonna change because they're importing from China.
Mm.
it's so uncertain at the moment, isn't it? And it's just it's hard to kind of appreciate where it's going to end. Maybe by the time this episode airs, there'll be some kind of conclusion to the whole tariff situation. But it feels to me like you're either going to end up with prices massively increasing, so inflation and construction projects go up, or things just won't be available, which is
Yeah,
worse, and projects grind to a halt.
yeah, exactly.
But do you think humans are better than AI at picking that signal up when something's going to change, when there is volatility, or do you think? Because I know, with some lagging models, there's an issue, right? Because you're still reactive. If you have your sensors out there, or your data which is lagging, and the insight you get is lagging, then the decisions you make is also going to be outdated. Typically with humans, if you're an expert in something that you do, you would assume that you can pick up the signal quite quickly, because when there's multiple different factors, you can kind of feel it, right, across all of those different variables. But do you think AI will have a place where it can start to detect all of this information so that we can be more proactive? Or do you think there's always going to be a level of ambiguity?
I think when it comes to mind, that's gonna be always ambiguity. That's my feeling. I mean, AI can do a research, scan the web, get the sources it needs, but still they do not know the details, like what's the decisions are made at the central banks and stuff. So, yeah,
Yeah, I
I
think you're
think the
right. It goes
human,
back to
at
what
least the human, puts an number and takes responsibility. Right? He can explain it. Whereas AI will give you the sources, but you can't blame AI at the end of the day, right?
yeah.
AI gave me this number.
And it's like you say, sometimes there's decisions that you make which are, on the face of it, are totally non-logical, but it's for another reason. Let's take the World Cup, for instance, or the Olympics. If you look at building the Olympics Games, economically, you probably never do it because it costs a huge amount of money. The reason people do it is partly because of the effect to GDP in the long term, and more than anything, probably to do with reputation and the mood in the country. How do you,
Mm.
I suppose an AI could do that, but you'd have to train it properly for it to understand those kind of concepts as well.
And you have to get it to understand sentiment as well, right? I think that's the bit. There's always a subjective experience that we all share that you can't quite nail on with AI because it can't feel.
Yet. I don't know if it will reach that stage, but
Yet,
where we are unsure with AI, it's evolving very fast.
yeah, it is moving too fast. Even for us, it's moving too fast.
Yeah.
But okay, let's turn our attention to, in the last few minutes of this chat, is the future of the industry and where you think things are going to go over the next. I mean, I try not to go any further than a 5 to 10 year timescale because it gets impossible to try and predict. But let's take QSs. So a lot of QSs will, that's my bread and butter. That's what I trained in. And that's what a lot of the estimators that use your products will be some kind of QS for a main contractor, I guess, or for a consultant. So how do you think AI will, I suppose two questions. How do you think AI will reshape the role of QSs maybe over the next 5 years? And to go with that, what skills will a quantity surveyor need in 5 years that they might not have today?
So AI will definitely improve the speed and the quality of the work that the QS is delivering. So AI will help, to make faster decisions, price something faster, more accurately maybe. And we see already, we have proof within our system for that. I mean, we have metrics now, we know it's happening. And the skills that the QS needs to understand is now how AI made this recommendation or this assumption. You need to understand a bit how you train a model, how you train some machine learning or LLM models. To be able to understand why this is proposed by AI and what does it mean. What is a data set, how I train a model. Not very detailed, but at least understand something and where the faults may be. If you're missing some data, you need to be able to judge and get the conclusion you need. That's the important skill that I think it's going to happen.
So they still need that background training because the only way you can interpret that is by learning the basics. It's a bit like, I always use the analogy of in the music industry, the old engineers used to use tape and they'd have to learn how to splice tape. Obviously they don't do that anymore, but by learning that skill at university, they they understand what's happening, even with the algorithms. And I think you're right, Tolis. I think it's going to be the same with QSs. You still need to learn the basics. You still need to know how to take off. You still need to learn how to estimate. You still need to learn how to put a cost plan together. But you might
and the first principles, right? When I estimate something, if I'm a contractor and I put the resources, like what carpenters, what formwork, you need to run at least once the calculations, right? To understand all calculations are taking place, not just a number, a rate. It's more than a rate. So the first principles are quite important.
Yeah. And when you talk about first principles, that's like the labor, plant,
material. Yeah, still, I mean, you see, that's quite important.
That's still what it all comes down to at the end of the...
Exactly.
Until we move into the metaverse. That's what we need. So, it's a bit of a controversial follow-on question to that. Do you think there's still going to be the need for a distinct QS role in the future, or do you think it will merge into the project manager's responsibility?
I think there will be still a role for a QS, right? So, I mean, although you see in some countries there is no QS, right?
Yeah, exactly.
In Greece, there's no QS. In the
Is
US,
there none in Greece? Okay.
So definitely there is a function for somebody taking responsibility for estimating, for monitoring progress, cost control. These are functions that will not be eliminated. AI will be assisting, but somebody needs to take care of that and be responsible.
So Tolis, you've been in the field for many, many years, and there will be many other graduates who are coming into this space. Do you have any advice for those in terms of, pitfalls that they should look out for, or opportunities they might be able to dabble in, which might help them become a lot more digitally savvy in terms of where they can go in estimating or even QSing?
Yeah, the first thing I recommend is BIM, right? I mean, it's been ages. We were in 2012 that we proved that BIM is ready for takeoff. Can you imagine this? 2012. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was us and Solibri at the finals that proved that BIM is ready for takeoff. Now we see the last couple of years it's picking up, so people don't get it. So if you're a young QS, you can start understanding BIM, what BIM is, right? The process, the data you put in a 3D model in a design, because that's key value for a QS. That's something you can get for estimating, getting your quantities out, tracking your progress. As a company, we have also a tool called CellBIM. It's an add-on in Excel. If you're a graduate, you can download it. We provide also licenses to the graduates at cellbim.com, so they can open a model inside the spreadsheet and start experimenting with the data, the quantities, the measurements within Excel. So BIM is very important. I think.
Well, where can they find that, Tolis? You mentioned it. Is there a website they can go to?
Yeah, it's a website. It's called www.cellbim, not ExcelBim. Initially, it was named ExcelBim, but Microsoft sent us a letter to change the name. So it became CellBim.
I'm sure you've got that framed, have you? You've got that cease and desist somewhere in your office.
So yeah, we said, it runs inside Excel, so please change the name.
Yeah, excellent. Now that sounds like a really good resource.
Yeah. So,
and in terms of, and within BIM, Tolis, could you also paint a picture for those graduates as to where there may be some potential collaboration in BIM and AI?
Yeah, definitely, because BIM keeps the data, right? It keeps the descriptions, a proper 3D model, BIM file. It has all the details that you need. So AI can then start doing the mapping, what you would be doing manually, picking the elements like concrete and then mapping it with your database. That's something AI can automate. So, yeah.
Do you know, I always felt like BIM, the great promise of BIM, could never really come to pass until AI got involved. Because the problem with BIM is that it's only as good as the data, like you say. And then the skill of a QS for me is measuring the white lines, the things that aren't on the drawing. But when you combine BIM and AI, then AI can help with the bits that aren't, the white lines effectively.
That's a good point, but there is something that doesn't need AI. It's called parametric estimating or assemblies. The Americans are using that. I mean, they were familiar with that. So we managed, when you load the wall, an assembly can feed all the details like the paint, the plaster. So you don't need to have AI to do that. I mean,
Can you give some explanation into the differences between the two?
Okay, so parametric estimating is like a fixed model. It's a parametric model that has inputs and outputs. My inputs are parameters like the type of the wall, right? The thickness of the wall, if it needs plaster, if I need to add plaster, all the details, paint, what type of paint, So by putting that against a 3D element, which is just a wall, doesn't have much metadata, then I can generate the BOQs with the quantities. So the paint, the plaster, all the details. AI, of course, can do that more intelligently, but the parametric, if my model is not perfect, that can be done with combining an assembly with a 3D element.
Mm.
We did it with AI. We did a research project with High Speed Rail, HS2, RICS, Skanska. So we did. People can Google it. So they gave us 1,000 bridges, I believe, models which were not classified, and we were using AI to classify the elements to be sure that okay, this is a deck, this is a pier, and then we were putting parametric models against each element that we were classifying and generating the estimate. That still is an R&D. I mean, we didn't go to production mode, but that's something that's a proof of concept that you can combine AI, you can combine assemblies and the 3D model, you can automate. Lots of stuff.
Really interesting. Thanks. Tolis, I just want to move on for the last few minutes to some questions about you, really, and your experience. One key question is, if you could start Nometech today from scratch, but with all the knowledge that you now have after however many years in the industry, would you do anything differently?
Yes, I would do some stuff differently. So basically, one thing that we failed is we tried to provide something that's very innovative from early stages. As I said, 2012, we were doing beam takeoffs. But providing to the market something that's innovative, it solves the problem differently, it doesn't mean that it will get adopted.
No.
So you have to search for the value proposition. You have to search for something that is going to convince the decision makers. And we're talking about an industry where they're reluctant to change, right? So you shouldn't get them out of their comfort zone quickly. So you have to go step by step, provenly deliver something they're confident with, and then go faster.
Well, funny, you won't be surprised to hear we've heard that time and time again. The whole adoption piece is the real challenge. Is there anything you can advise for maybe a startup listening that they should do to help with that adoption? Is there any lessons learned that you can give your personal...
Yeah, listen to the customers and listen to your first customers. Your early adopters are very important. You have to stay close to them, get feedback. That's the important aspect. Understand the challenges. When you solve something, you need to add value to them.
Really good advice there, really good advice.
Don't try to go for the main market. The early adopters are key. People that want to adopt your product and being proud, when they present their colleagues.
Absolutely. And then one last question then, given your kind of Greek background, calling in from Athens, is there anything about, because this is an international podcast and we're fortunate enough to speak to people from all different parts of the world, but is there anything specific about Greek culture or philosophy that gives you personally an advantage as a tech entrepreneur?
Okay, there are a few things. Greek philosophy is huge, right? And I like the Stoic philosophers a lot. I read. But, if I want to sum up to two things that as a philosophy I follow, one is keep everything moderate. Even as a business, we didn't try to get funded, move quickly and acquire a customer base and grow like a unicorn or stuff like that. We moved, tried to keep everything moderate. So get our customer base, become profitable, and then grow organically by acquiring more customers. So that's something we followed from the Greek philosophy.
Yes.
That's the one thing I think. And the other thing is that everything flows from Heraclitus. So you cannot get into the river twice in the same river. So keep that in mind. Everything moves and changes, and you have to know that you have to live the moment. So that's important, right?
Well, that's really
tomorrow it's going to be different you, right?
And if AI is a river, it's moving extremely fast, isn't it?
Exactly. Exponentially fast now. I hope we don't get drawn at the end. Yeah.
Tolis, is there anything else you want to add before we finish? Is that where can people find out more about Nometech? Where can they, trial it and see what some of your products are? Because they really are impressive.
Yeah. So as a business, we have, I would say, three main products, commercial products. One is the Cost to Edge, which is our estimating platform. It's a proven application for large organizations that want to invest in estimating and integrate it with other processes. We have our benchmarking application, which is called Cost Modeler, and it supports statistical analysis. It's web-based, so people can log in and check data. And we have also this add-on for Excel. So if you're a graduate or a young engineer or a small company that you want to start experimenting with BIM or even 2D drawings, you can load CAD or PDF or do takeoffs inside Excel. You can download Cell BIM and trial. In order to be able to use BIM, we had to build our 3D engine from ground up. So I'm a bit of control freak, so I want to make sure the quantities, we have control on the quantities. So that 3D engine is called Beam City, and there are several companies now, software companies that embed into their application. So that's the fourth product, but in reality it's a technology we provide to our software business.
And that's your own proprietary 3D
3D engine, yes.
Wow,
3D engine is the same I have in Cellbeam, in Cosmos, and other companies.
Impressive stuff. Well, we'll make sure we put into the show notes the website so people can go in, have a look and find out more. And if people want to contact Nometech,
they can drop Nometech.com. They can log in and drop a message there. We'll get in touch.
Fantastic. Well, Tolis, thank you so much for your time. It's been really interesting talking to you.
James.
No, really good, and we wish you all the success in the world, because what we do need is products like yours are going to really push the boundary and start. Hopefully we'll seeing that efficiency, productivity curve start moving up over the next 5 years.
Yeah, definitely. I think there'll be many changes coming.
I'm sure there will be. Thank you so much, Tolis.
Thanks.
And hopefully
Thank
you'll come
guys. Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
Project Flux is here.
That's a wrap for today's episode. But before you go, exciting news. Project Flux is teaming up with Project Management Global to bring you the latest in AI-driven project delivery and essential management insights. Through this partnership, expect weekly AI insights, practical tools, and expert thought leadership, ensuring you stay ahead in the evolving project landscape. Stay tuned for exclusive content, joint research, and strategies to supercharge your project outcomes. You can learn more at www.pm-global.co.uk and be part of the future of project management. See you later.
Project Flux is here.
Just want to give a big shout out to our sponsors, Construct AI. For anyone interested in looking at Construct AI, the link's in our show notes. There's a free tier that you can play around with. Yoshi and I have been using it for a good year since it was originally launched, and we get a huge amount of value out of it. So I thoroughly encourage everyone to go onto the Construct AI site and have a play around.
Cool. And guys, before we sign off, please don't forget to share, follow, and like all of our stuff. So that helps us to engage with you and understand a bit more about what you want, so we can bring it to your doorstep as early as possible.
See you later, everyone.